Hi, everyone, and welcome to Part 2 Book Club podcast 12, I believe we're on. Actually, I think we might be on more than that. It doesn't matter anymore. We've kind of reached the point where who cares? Let's stop counting. Today is a book review, though. Woo! The whole point of why we came together in the first place. Before we kick off, I just want to say thanks to everyone who listened to our last podcast. It was a very raw podcast on fertility and how our families came together, and thus far it is our most listened to podcast ever. So we're really grateful for everyone, and also a few people who left comments and reached out. So thanks so much. If you want to catch that, just head over to any of the podcast platforms that you prefer and look for Part 2 Book Club. Kind of like you did to get here, so maybe just look on the list. That's right.
Back catalogue.
But thanks so much, and also welcome to all of our new followers on Instagram as well. We had a big impouring of new followers following the last podcast, so thanks so much for that. But we are here today to review All the Colours of the Dark by Chris Whittaker, which was my book club pick. And yeah, really excited to review this one with everyone. I feel like this is a book that needs a little bit more attention, in my view. So before we get going, though, hi everyone.
Hi.
How are we all?
Top of the world.
Very good. Wow. Okay. Great. Alicia, you want to chime in?
Yeah. No, good. Very well.
That's lovely. Everyone's got to really know us. That's nice. I'm very well, thank you. I'm very busy at work and busy traveling and busy raising a toddler, but otherwise I am solid. Probably before we kick off, I do just want to let Sean and Alicia know that I hate them for introducing me to the Akatar series. And
Yes.
the fact that last night I finished reading, put my daughter to bed, and then went to bed myself. Woke up at about 11, so maybe 2 hours later. Don't judge me, I'm a perimenopausal single mother. And ended up reading for another 3 hours. So,
Oh my God.
There's that.
Yay!
Thanks for that, assholes.
I started book 5 today, Zara.
You're ahead of me now, Sue.
Yes, I am.
Well ahead of me. I've got to start book 5 at some point. I will, at some point.
Anyway, so yeah, I'm almost at the end of book 2, so I've got book 3 literally ready to go, because I was like,
3.
I can't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. But I'm traveling this week, so Akatar's going to get a solid look. So thanks for the review. I hate you, but thanks for the review. Yeah.
I think we need to put a huge caveat in at the beginning of this, though. We are going to spoil the shit out of this book.
We need to talk about this.
Yeah.
Huge spoilers, though, incoming.
Yeah.
So
just
for anyone, there's nothing subtle. I want to talk about all of this.
Yeah. So for anyone listening who hasn't actually read All the Colours of the Dark, please do go read it first, because...
Do you know who has read All the Colours of the Dark?
Who?
Jill Biden.
Who?
That's so random.
Old names, why?
You, Alicia, for knowing who Jill Biden is.
I know who Jill Biden is. I thought you said something else, and I was like...
Jill Biden.
Completely out of context, I was like, I don't know who... Is this someone we know?
No, Jill Biden was photographed reading All the Colours of the Dark on a beach recently.
Yeah. Good on you, Jill. Good on you, sister. I'll reach out, say hi. Hi, Jilly. Yes. Okay, let's get into it. All the Colours of the Dark. So the 2-second synopsis from me. So I actually very randomly saw it in a shop, and I picked it up. And then, as if the technology knew what I looked at, about a day later, I started to see a few videos and stuff of people reviewing it and saying how brilliant it was. And one review, which was the one I think you saw as well, Alicia, she was like, this is like one of my top 2 of 2024 reads. And I was like, oh, now I'm intrigued. So yeah, I just picked it basically for that. It was pitched as crime and romance, but we'll get on to talk about our thoughts and feelings around that, because I know there's a couple of big thoughts and feelings around that. And we have been struggling to reel Sarah in, and Sarah's obviously like a crimey, thrillery genre.
Psychological, drama-y, sort of, yeah.
So we were trying to find something that bridged that gap. So this felt almost right. The basic synopsis of the story is that a young boy is kidnapped and held captive. His best friend in the world then goes on a mission to find him and does in fact find him. The rest of the story is then consumed with a secondary story about a girl he was kidnapped with, but essentially the premise is, did she exist or not? Because there's no trace of her when he's found. So there's a lot of love stories in this book, but there's also a lot of twists and turns. I think I said this author just punches you in the face with twists over and over again, and you're just there for it every single time. So yeah, that's your basic premise. It was a big book, hey Sarah, but good text, solid text. Sarah approved text. But yeah, we might just kick off with, what did everyone think? What were your first thoughts?
Who gets to go first?
I think Sarah should go
Sarah
because she read it.
Yeah, you're very excited.
most recently.
Yeah. I need
I
to
can't
reread my
remember the
notes.
No, but oh my god, like this is what I want in a book. Like I absolutely loved it. And I can't read at the speed of everyone else. Not that I can't actually read at that speed, but I've got so much going on that actually I get short spurts of time and I just didn't want to hurry it. So I think that's why I kept delaying this sometimes. I was like, guys, I'm loving the book. Like, can we just wait another week or two? Because I don't want to skim past anything, because I think we're probably going to get to is it a romance, is it not?
We will.
But in terms of books I read and love, this, I think, Zara, you say it the best when you think it just punches you. Are we allowed to spoil things? Because there's some, because...
Yeah, we put a massive caveat.
When Misty died, like, I actually cried. And I haven't cried at a book. And and it's the way I think it's written, like, I think Chris Whittaker's brilliant. I love those short, sharp sentences. I love the really punchy, I love the short chapters. I love the punchy text where he sort of like hits you with a feeling in a really it's not roundabout. You're sort of like, and when I think it was like when Misty dies, I think it's like, she was there and then she wasn't. And like, that's how he tells you that she's died. And you're like, and she's going, she's going to die. And then she dies. Finding out she had when she had the baby, I think then finding out when Sane had the baby. Like, I found this book so touching on so many levels. But at the same time, I was gripped because I was constantly wondering who was actually the bad guy, who had been... I read a lot of crime novels, so thinking who had, gone under for something they hadn't really done. We find out that, in the, Smarty Toombs, like, he's not actually, he sacrificed, because he was trying to help these women, he sacrificed his whole life. I think in terms of romance, it's not necessarily like a romantic story where guy meets girl, fall in love, or, there's a bit of but the relationships I found were so beautiful and showing the sacrifice that people were willing to make for other people in their lives. Like, whether it is a daughter or a friend or, the character of Sammy, I thought was hilarious. Sort of like how he was, willing to do all of these things for Patch that, and I wouldn't know where to start with talking about how much I love this book, which was a real surprise because there obviously is many love stories throughout it, but it's certainly not a classic love story. And it's got what I love, which is it was a twist and turn. I didn't want to put it down. Like Zara said, I would get up in the morning and think I'm just going to read like 10 minutes because I just want to keep reading. And I was very invested in the characters. And for the first time ever, I teared up in a book. Because I loved the relationship between Patch and Misty. I thought it was so unexpected at the start, but so beautifully written and so natural and understandable, actually, as it transpired through the book. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Nice. Alicia?
Go on.
Oh no, go on.
I have problems.
No, I was just going to say I have different feelings about Misty and Patch. Zara knows. But Alicia, you go first.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely love the book. When I finished the book, I cried. which I can't remember the last time I actually cried when I finished a book. And I think it's because of the roller coaster you are on when you're reading it, and also the relationships that you are so invested in throughout the book, and all the revelations at the end suddenly come to those big like aha moments. And I think for me, the themes of the topics throughout, which we'll probably talk about, I mean, it's love, but love in different forms, and relationships, and you know, we were talking about the love of Patch and Saint and their friendship at the start to the end. Whilst it wasn't romantic, like that was such a deep, pure love that they had. I think, even though at the start, you know, when you're younger, it's that unrequited, you know, it feels like an unrequited love because they're so young, but they've been through so much. And I don't read that many crime novels, but I like the fact that obviously it keeps you on your toes because there's the ongoing whodunit story. But for me, it was really more about those relationships and like the fact that you get to know all the different people and characters really until however many years later. Yeah, absolutely loved it. I think probably my most favorite book of the year so far. And
100%. Yeah.
I mean, I'm gutted I lent it to my friend who was in hospital, and she was like, I need something to read. And I was like, well, read this. I really want it back. So I want to read it again or read parts of it. Because I think also you, I don't know, I feel like when Zara, you were reading it, but Zara, Sean and I were chatting about it while we were, you know, waiting to do this. And they've said a few things. And I thought, oh, I need to go back and just reread that because I don't recall certain things happening. I really like that in a book where you think, oh, actually, there are different angles to it that maybe you miss. A bit like a film, you know, you miss it the first time and you have to go back and revisit. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. I was sad that it ended. Yeah, the short, sharp chapters at first, I was so confused by the writing. But you get really, really used to it, don't you? And then you just end up loving the way, like you say, he just punches you in the face with something after not every chapter, but most chapters, something happens. You go, oh God. But the one thing I want to say, because obviously all the colours of the dark. Now we think about when he's in the dark with Grace,
like a year,
and he has to picture, and then he ends up being this amazing artist. I just think that's just it's just so amazing.
It reminded me in a way of like, I don't know if you guys read Where the Quarter Sings.
Sing, yeah.
And where she becomes sort of like a master of the wildlife.
Yeah.
Like through her grief and pain and all of that. Like I was like, it had that sort of like where someone's not interested in kind of monetary value. They're just, you know, they're successful because they're passionate. And I thought that was, it reminded me of that. Where the Quarter Sing. Which one was it?
Actually. So it's saying, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Johnny.
So I loved the book. I 100% don't think it's a romance in any way, shape, or form. I have big feelings about this as a romance fan. But I've always loved crime anyway. I mean, before I got into romance, I would say probably crime and psychological thrillers were the genre I would read most before romance. So I loved the page turner element of it. I loved the intensity of just like you've all said, it just punches you in the face over and over and over. It's like you think you're getting a bit of a reprieve because, you know, something has finally been a little bit resolved, they're having a little bit of a break, and then bam, something else happens and you're like, oh, okay, no rest for me then. And my emotions just went on this roller coaster ride for the whole book. I cried my eyes out when Nyx died. That one absolutely killed me because he knew what he was doing.
It's
and
really
and Nyx and Toombs and how they just hid their love. And because at first I text Zara, I was like, Toombs is really suspicious, and she was like, I think you just sent me an emoji of a face. Like, don't want to spoil anything, so here's just an emoji of a face with wide eyes. And I was like, he's so suspicious. And then then you find out that he was just the most self-sacrificing man on the entire planet. He didn't have to take that Hippocratic oath as seriously as he did, because these women weren't technically his patients, really, were they? In a way, it was all like under the table, but he decided to like save them from all of the publicity and all of that kind of thing and go to his death penalty. what an amazing man. Just incredible. I actually really didn't like Misty until I found out she was dying. Genuinely, I was just like, I didn't like her. And I can't really put my finger on why. I just didn't like her.
Then she was dying and it was okay.
And then she was dying and I was like, oh, I feel really bad. Like, I feel really bad that I don't like her. The woman's dying. Awful. But yeah, until that point, I was like, she's selfish. She's self-serving. She's all just take. I don't think she really wants to be with Patch because of who he is. I think she just wants to be with him because she sees him as partly like the hero figure in her life, which obviously he genuinely was, but also like he's the taboo, he's the one that she shouldn't want, he's the one that her parents like wouldn't, what's the word I'm looking for, condone, that kind of thing. And I felt like that's where she was going with it, and I was like, what a selfish cow, just leave him alone. Like, you know, let him in. What was her name? Saint. Let Saint have him. She begged you, like, you know, don't take him from me, and you just went and took him anyway, you bitch. And that's where I was. And then I found out she had cancer and she was dying, and I was like, shit, I'm a horrible person because she doesn't deserve that at all. But yeah, I just didn't like her until that point. With the writing, like Alicia, at first, just his sentence structures is quite different to a lot of other books that I've read, and the short chapters was very different to most books that I've read. That took me a little while to get my head around, but once I did, it was actually just so easy to. But at first, I was like, "Oh, these sentence structures are really different. Like, I don't know if I can get my head around this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get into it. But like, give me a few chapters, and I was in. I was done. No, it was beautifully told. I loved that he was an artist. I loved that he didn't care about the money, and I loved how he brought all these people around the country together without like really trying. Like, he didn't make these people want to help him. He didn't make these people do anything for him. He just, with his persistence of trying to help missing people and their families over the years, he just kind of created his own little community and his own little web of I don't know, like love. And I thought that was really beautiful.
I think that's underpinned by, I think throughout the book, all these people have different, they're obsessed, they have an obsession driven by love. So even the main killer, this guy, Saint, you know, there's a lot of very obsessed people, I think, who are like super focused on
singular focus,
their
thing, which is a bit scary. Anyway,
I think it was beautiful. And Zara,
I just loved it. From literally the first chapter, it felt really honest and humble, and I think he doesn't. It's interesting because like the more he wrote it was really in keeping with the characters in the story and where it was based. So this kind of, it's small town America, it's working class, it's all of those things. There's like no time is wasted on the frivolous. I loved that. I loved that he wrote it very similar to where it's based. You know, these are working class people in a working class town in middle America. They don't have the luxury of this giant prose, you know, this like super fancy shit. It was like, let's just get on and get the story told. And I just love that, because for me, no matter how long you dipped into the book, there was something that happened. There was always something going on, and it didn't feel like this freaking ACOTAR book where I'm like, just get it on already. But I digress again. Excuse me. I thought the way he wrote the characters was just beautiful, but in a way that was so sparing of the unnecessary. Like, he didn't linger on, like, I don't even know if I could remember what color hair Saint had, for instance, or like what, you know, what the house looked like, or what the road looked like, or, you know, he didn't. So there was no fluff. It was just lovely. And the sheer amount of characters in this book that you just fall madly in love with is a testament to the writing, because I don't think I've ever read a book where I've felt so invested in not one or two characters, but like
17
10, you know what I mean? Like there were
Yeah.
so many, including Grace, you know, like, and arguably you don't meet her really in real life until
Till the end.
right at the end.
Yeah.
But you feel so invested in her, and you feel like you
Yeah.
know, you really want to believe that she exists, but you keep going back and forth. And yeah, just beautiful. I think the grandmother was probably one of my absolute favorites. I just was like, you can see where Saint got her character from.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Toombs and Nick story, I absolutely bawled my eyes out on the plane. I was like,
Yeah.
I sort of saw it coming, not very far ahead, but mostly when he's in the when he's in prison talking to him through the bars and he doesn't want to look at him. And I was like, this is so weird. Like, why wouldn't he want to look at him? And that's when I started to feel like he didn't do this. Like, I feel like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like he thinks if he looks at
Patch.
Patch
He'll
will
know.
see straight through him. He'll know straight away. But yeah, I just think it is, and I think it's a modern literary masterpiece in that it's unlike anything I've ever read in the way that it's written, style it's written. I just think it was. I think Sarah, you were still reading, so we had like a sub. Because I think I texted you all and I was like, who the fuck has finished this?
I know
book?
you were like,
I
I'm reading
need
it. I
to
don't even
talk
think I.
about it. I'm finally at least started it, so I was like really careful with her to be like, I was like, you tell me where you're up to, and we can at least talk up to that point.
Yeah.
But then luckily she finished it really quickly, and I had someone to talk to because I was like, I need to talk about this. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop.
We were sending each other like 5-minute voice note videos back and forth on Instagram, on WhatsApp, like, but I think blah 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 blah, and it was like we were having a conversation. We were just doing it in like 5-minute bursts.
Yeah, just love, like, honestly, I haven't for a very long time read a book that's like really stayed with me beyond that last page for all the right reasons, you know, for not for the I've just wasted 3 days of my life reading a shocker. This was definitely not that. Absolutely loved it.
No.
However, let's get on to talk about love story or not love story.
There's so many love stories in this book.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the idea of what you're willing to do, you're willing to sacrifice for someone else's happiness, for someone else's safety, for someone else's future. I think there are some real. I think it's more relationship than romance. I think would be, but I'm not very good at the whole romance genre. So maybe the fact that I really love this book shows.
It's not a romance.
maybe less of that. But no, I think in terms of it for me, one of the real strengths was how invested you were in, like you said, all the characters.
Yeah, I think the book kind of teaches you that it's really about it's love ultimately, and less romance. I think there is romance within the book, but I think what it's trying to say, or what I took away from it, is like love comes in all shapes and forms and sizes, and you don't need the physical, sexual relationship to really love someone and be in love with someone. Actually, I think that can always stay, and I think that it blossoms and develops. And the one that sticks in mind to me is obviously the one that we start with Patch and Saint. And at the end, you know, and the things they do for each other, they've done for each other throughout the book, it's probably stronger and deeper than any other, you know, love that you can imagine. Yet there's no physical connection really, apart from that one kiss and the hugs or whatever they do. So I think that's, you know, that sort of, for me, was the message is, you know, you can really, and he loves Grace, like he loves this person who might not even be real. So love to someone can be as strong as any sort of physical love that you have and feel, and that disappears, whereas the other love is, you know, it's unbreakable. If you believe you love someone or something, then that's yours to hold and forever. And I think that's why I was so devastated at the end, because he's got that picture, and I'm like, oh, it all comes together, and it's like, oh, it was her, you know. He's really the love of his life.
I think the other thing for me on love in the book is it's also a story about how even if you try your hardest, sometimes people are incapable of it. And I think like Patch's mum, there was love there, but it was flawed and it was broken. And then Misty's dad, you know.
Yeah. Although were he trying to do maybe what he thought at the time was the right thing to do?
In a controlling, misogynistic way.
And even I forget the bad guy's name.
Hang on, I might have it here.
Eli, Aaron.
Eli, yeah.
That's him.
You could even draw a line about, you know, easy solution would have been for him to get rid of his daughter, right? Like that would have been an easy solution. He didn't. And so there's a whole narrative there around, you know, even the most evil, sadistic, awful.
Still loved his daughter in some way.
Loved her in a way, in a weird, sadistic, horrible way, but there was love there. And, you know, even all the way to the end, you know, years and years and years, 20 odd years later, he still hadn't, well, it wasn't ideal what he did. So I think there's beautiful love in it. But I think there's also like it's a really interesting critique of the full spectrum of, you know, as humans, most all of us need that in our lives, but some of us are just incapable of doing it in the right way, if that makes any sense. And then you've got people like Nix, who had no vested interest in Patch whatsoever in the beginning, didn't know him from Adam yet, decided to go past his house and sit outside it and make sure he was safe in the evening because he knew his mother, you know, had a problem. And I don't know, I just actually think this is the ultimate love story in all of its forms and in all its flawed, like broken. I love that there was not one straightforward boy meets girl falls in love with girl.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was like, this has got nothing to do with romance and absolutely everything to do with love and like finding your people and then just loving them so hard that you will literally like murder someone for them because they hurt them.
John?
So this is why I 100% don't think it's a romance, because for me a romance centers on a couple, specifically a couple, and there's a happily ever after for that couple. That in a nutshell is what a romance is. There wasn't really a happily ever after for any couple in this book except for Sammy and Misty's mum. But pretty much nobody else got their happily ever after.
Oh, I disagree.
Do you? Nix and Toombs didn't. Misty died. Grace didn't like Patch and Grace, like, you know, reunited, but that was it.
But I think emotionally a lot of them got their happily ever after. It doesn't necessarily have to be with...
No, but in a romance it does.
Okay,
It
fine,
has
that's
to be
right.
like the couple thing. And that's why I don't think it's a romance. I agree that it was a book that showcased love in all its forms. And I thought that was beautiful. I thought the relationships were beautiful. I loved that Nix was a father figure for Saint. I loved that Sammy was a father figure for Patch. And then I loved how much so when Nix was talking about his long lost love, like once upon a time, I actually at first thought that was going to be Patch's mum, because he like goes to check on her and stuff.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's going to be Patch's mum. And then when he was talking to Toombs in prison and Toombs was talking about his long lost love, I noticed that he never ever said she or like that was never gender specific. And I was like, okay, that's definitely a guy. But I never thought until it all came out that it was going to be Nick. But I thought all the relationships between all the characters were beautiful. All the characters that I liked, anyway.
I think we've done that. I think you've highlighted, like, there's some really clever writing there. Like you said, he was never gender specific at that point.
Yeah, never gender
and particularly
specific.
when you're reading about Saint, and then you have that chapter where say it goes back and it's her son who's grown up, and you're like, and she says, you know, he never let me finish that conversation. You're like,
So
if you
when
go back, you're like, you're right.
Mm.
She never
I
says she
yeah,
had an abortion. It's
so
just assumed.
when she says to
Yeah.
him, I went to such and such a clinic to abort your baby, and then he punches her,
Yeah.
and it's like lights out. As she said it, my first thought was, oh, she didn't go through with it.
Oh,
But
see, I
then
never thought that. I was
oh,
like,
see,
oh,
I
right,
didn't
she had an
either.
abortion.
But
Yeah.
then because he beats the shit out of her, and it was like so big and dramatic and awful, and then you skip ahead in time, I
And
never
she's
thought about it
known for
again.
someone in the village,
Yeah.
in the town.
But then I did say to Zara, like, or maybe it was both Zara and Alicia, that she did take a 6-month sabbatical.
Yeah.
And a 6-month sabbatical is quite a long spread of time for having been beaten up.
See,
Like,
I never twigged on any of that. And so
it
for
wasn't
me, reading it, I was like, oh, of course. I was like,
Yeah.
it was.
But it was one of those things, like, I had the niggling
was
thought
there,
at the time, but then because so much other stuff happened, I forgot about it.
Yeah.
And then when she's going to like take all her acorns and her leaves and her feathers and all that stuff she's been collecting, which we're all like, before that point, we're like, why is she collecting all this stuff? And then she goes to see her son. I was like, oh God, yeah, I forgot about
Absolutely
my
adore, though, that she
inkling.
becomes a mother to Charlotte.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was
Same.
really lovely.
Like, I just thought that
loved
was
their
so
relationship.
yeah,
And that
so
was
beautifully
quite
written.
an emotional moment as well when she takes her to college, does she? And Charlotte says, I didn't mean it when I said I wouldn't want you as my mum. I was like, oh my God.
Oh, I know.
I thought that was really, really lovely. And I thought Charlotte was such a little spitfire. Like, she was so funny, and I mean, she was kind of like a chip off Sammy's block, really, wasn't she? Just
Sammy might be my favorite character in the whole.
They were just
hilarious.
Yeah, she was just such a little spitfire. I actually really liked her character, even as a kid, even when she was being a bit difficult. I liked her character.
Sassy.
Yeah, very sassy.
I think one of the things I loved is like every single character made me really annoyed at them because they were human and flawed. So like,
yeah,
Sammy was probably the only one I never. Sammy and the grandma were probably the only two characters I never with, but like, you know, Patch makes a million decisions that you're like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing, man? Like, stop.
Prison, just serve your time.
Yeah. You know, I think Misty was quite polarizing for me. I felt like I was probably a bit like Sean. I felt a little bit torn about that whole thing. Like, clearly there was quite a lot of love there in various ways, but I found her a bit flawed up until probably when they reconnected and found out about the daughter. And then, I mean, you could just name characters that you'd be like, oh, you're really annoying me. Like, why have you done that?
One character who I hated kind of from the beginning, Jimmy. I knew he was going to be trouble.
Jimmy was bad. Did you always know Jimmy was bad?
I just knew, because he was so like
Jimmy. Sorry,
the one that Saint married.
Oh yeah, he was annoying.
I just knew. I just had a feeling that he was going to be bad news, and like she was marrying him just because she kind of felt pressured to, not by her grandmother, but like also just, you know, they were together. It was the next step. Like, what were her other options? Why wouldn't she say yes? I think she like had that kind of pressure as well. But I just had a feeling he was going to be a nightmare. And then like when she says that their first time, and he basically climaxed before anything even happened, and then he got really angry, and like I was like, that man's going to be violent.
Yeah,
that is going to be a violent man. Yeah.
Same.
So yeah, no, didn't like him at all.
So let's address the Grace in the room. What was everyone's thoughts on that whole
real or not real
storyline? Yeah, where would you sitting through the book
on Grace?
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't think she existed.
Oh, interesting.
So throughout it all something's on TV. I thought the most. Well, I vitiated between thinking she didn't exist. She didn't exist. Too. I also thought maybe Grace was possibly part of the murders. So that was I was like, that's going to be the big twist, that actually
it's a
She
12-year-old
was
girl.
murdering girls, but they had Patch, who's a boy. So that's why he was spared. And actually, she was a murderess. Murderess is not a thing. And there was a part of me that when he found her, that was a bit like mildly disappointed that she was an actual. And then she was like, "Oh no, but you're going to die because my dad's going to kill you." Then I thought, oh, she stayed in this house for this length of time because she knew eventually he'd. And then I think when you found out that she led Patch or led Saint to all of the other girls through how she'd spoken, I did really like that bit. But there was a point in time where I thought, either she didn't exist or she was responsible for the murders. But that's what I love in a crime where you psychological sort of thriller where you don't really trust yourself reading it, and you
so much second guessing.
Yeah, hugely. So I did think at one point she could have been the killer. She wasn't.
Definitely didn't think she was going to be the killer, but
Well, that's where I went.
I did flip flop on her, and also I didn't like her. I don't know why. Even though I was like, if she is captive of this person and she is real, like that's horrific. But I hated that she just didn't tell him stuff. Like, right? Why did she make it such a puzzle?
Yeah.
There was no need for it.
But she couldn't because she was being
we
listened
know
to.
now why.
Oh, I see. When you were there,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the whole book I kept trying to work out, why was she allowed, like why did she leave and come back, and of course all the worst things go through your head.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was implied, but yeah, I really struggled with that character. I mean, even to the point where he finds her, kind of struggled with that as well. And you kind of like, I don't know, I wanted her to, yeah, I don't know. I struggled with her.
Murderer.
I'd never thought she was a murderer, but I did think, was she a part of it? Like, is she luring these young girls?
Well, she's the bait.
Yeah. But then I was like, well, that's not what Misty remembered. She just remembers someone appearing out of nowhere. So, yeah, I definitely struggled with with the Grace piece. I think it was beautifully done. Just, she was she was so unusually written. This, like the whole praying thing when he came in, and I was trying to work out, like, and then of course you learn about, the nuns and the whole like religion piece in this, which I actually thought was really clever.
Because I fully believed, even though other things I didn't kind of cling on to, I was like, yeah, she was truly. There was only one moment, like later on, when I think somebody had said, he's got to let it go. Like these are all just, things that he made up in his head. I thought, oh, maybe, but then it was like, well, how? There's so much detail in the way that he retold what she had said to him. I was like, there's no way in hell, and he's calling up Saint, that anyone can make up that shit. And no matter how, and he was also quite young.
13,
Yeah, but then I didn't think, I was also weirdly disappointed when he found her at the end. You kind of want him just to found dead body, like, or she lived there, but she died. I don't know why, but I think for her to actually have been alive felt a little bit like and it kind of brushed. I don't know if it brushed over, but it wasn't. So much had happened up to that point that you think, yeah, like Sarah said, unless there was this like undeniable love and they stayed together and whatever, then there's the romance. But it just didn't work out that way. So it did feel like slight dampener, or like slightly disappointing given everything else that we had to go through as a reader.
I mostly thought she was real. There were moments where I was like, oh, do you know what though? Like, she speaks really oddly, and like she talks in riddles, and like he's been alone in the dark for a really long time. He could 100% just be losing the plot, and for a little bit I thought maybe Grace was his subconscious like bringing like a new saint in for him as company, and like his subconscious would never bring in actual saint because he wouldn't want saint to be there in that horrific situation, but like his psyche was like creating this character who was like his new saint, his new support system whilst he was alone. I thought for a little while I thought maybe that was it, but as you said, Alicia, there was just so much detail, and he was young. He wouldn't have known about all these places and all these things that she'd seen that she was talking about. But I also was disappointed that he found her, because I actually found that whole thing a bit pointless. Like, why did she give him clues as to where to find her? If she never dobbed her dad into the authorities herself, like, she didn't sound like she actually wanted her dad to be caught, even when he, like, Patch got there and he's like, I'm going to save you. And she's like, no, you have to go. Now you've seen me, you know I'm alive. Okay, you got to go. And I was like, but like, well, why did you lead him there if you just want him to go again? Like, so yeah, I was kind of disappointed that he found her and that she was alive.
Poignant, yeah.
Yeah, so I was a bit disappointed. And as I say, and as you say, because they didn't like end up together, they didn't run off together or have a relationship past that point. It just kind of felt a little bit pointless in a way. Great that obviously they tracked down Eli finally and like he got his comeuppance, but like I don't know that Grace actually needed to be part of the getting Eli thing at the very end. I mean,
it definitely leaves you with a lot. Sometimes I literally just drift off thinking about it. It's like some of these characters, they really stay with you for a really long time.
Yeah.
But yeah. Was there anything in the book other than the lack of the cookie cutter boy meets girl, they get it on, or it all goes to hell and then they somehow make up? Storyline that Sean was looking for. Was there anything that didn't, other than the Grace thing, that anyone had any other troubles with?
I think the only other thing that I remember, and I wasn't sure how I felt about, was the Misty relationship. But I think like you say, I think I'm not sure really how he felt about her. I don't think the love was truly there. I think at the end there was more affection, and he did love her, but in an affectionate way, as a friend. Really.
I think he loved her. I think there's moments where he goes, you know, at the end of chapters where he say, you know, I forgot how, you know, you see Misty and you know lose your breath. Like he just like, I was like,
is that because of how attractive she is? Because she's beautiful.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
yeah. I forgot how hot she is, but in different words.
Yeah.
It's funny, of all of the characters, she's the one I had the absolute crystal clear idea of what she looked like in my head.
Yeah.
I was like, Misty for me is one person the whole way through. Everyone else sort of changed, yeah.
It's funny because I think, when I think back, I don't think Saint or Patch actually know what real and traditional love was supposed to look like. So like, Patch's mum, you know, had her demons, and he never saw two people in love having a healthy relationship, and neither did Saint. Saint saw her grandmother, which was this like hugely strong, independent woman who kind of got on with it and didn't care what anyone else thought. And so when you kind of like do the whole, oh, I wish they did or I wish they didn't, I actually think they were written in a way that neither of them actually knew how to do it. Neither of them knew how to have that kind of romantic relationship. Saint found someone she thought would just take care of her and be a partner in life, and that turned out terrible. And Patch just kind of floated around, not sure how to do it. So I often think like they didn't even know, because they don't know what that looks like. Neither of them do. So how could they ever have a cookie cutter love story? Because they don't know what.
Well, it's never going to be cookie cutter with everything they've gone through.
No, and nor would it be.
But like what you said, Zara, I think there's love that they have for each other. You know, it is almost enough for them. It's like enough. They know that they'll always be there for each other. And like you say, maybe the physical would have just ruined it for them, you know?
I agree. I would hate that if that happened.
Yeah.
Well, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Scores.
I'm ready to score this one.
Hang on, just me.
Scores on the doors. We'll start as we start. We'll start as we started. Okay. Sarah.
Okay, so I have debated this score many times today because I always like to leave a little bit of room for, for something more. But it's the best book I've read in at least about a year and a half, and so I think I'm gonna have to give it a 5. I'm gonna have to go full 5 for this one, because if this is like romance, if we're rating romance novel, and I get this one as a romance novel, I'm gonna have to give it a 5 because it's everything I love in a book. And yeah, there are probably little bits that are slightly troubling with it, but nothing enough for me to downgrade it. Yeah, this is my 5. Romance. There we go. Zara, thank you. I loved this book. Absolutely loved it.
Alicia.
I mean, there's no debate. It was a solid high 5 for me. I would give it more if I could.
I would give it more. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the best book this year that I've read, but also I think I'll reread it and then still think it's amazing. Okay. So there's no doubt it's an absolute. I'm in awe of this book, to be fair. And I want everyone to read it. I think everyone should read it.
I would never. It's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you, Zara, for choosing it. And when I saw it, though, I was like, "Oh shit, we have to read this." It's so big.
Long.
No. It's so worth it. It's worth it.
Shani?
580 pages. So I'm going to bring the score down a tiny bit. But only a tiny bit. I'm going 4.5.
Yeah.
I knew you. I should have done predictions today.
You should have, yeah. And Zara, I'm pretty sure we know what yours is.
Oh, mine's like 10 out of 5.
Yeah, 25 out of 5.
Fuck the scoring.
So
this is like, yeah.
Scores. Got everybody.
Why is it half? Are you bringing it down because no one got together? There's no romance. Misled.
Shani, what did you guess? Did you say 5 for all of us?
I said 5 for all of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was marketed as a love story, like love story come romance, and for me it wasn't that. So my expectations were in the wrong place, I think. And I had big feelings about it, which Zara will know from my several 5-minute videos harping on about. But yeah, that for me, it was just the one-sidedness of how I've interpreted Saint and Patch's relationship, and it hurt. I was like, poor Saint. No, poor Saint.
Well, yeah, poor Saint.
So it was literally just that. That's the only thing that brought it down for me. Everything else I love.
I thought like that conversation that we had that morning, your night, where you and I were going at, like, we had some quite strong feelings about the whole romance.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, she's fired up on this point. I reckon she's gonna go a whole point down just on that. So I'm surprised it was only half a point. But yeah.
No, it was only half because I did really love the book as a whole. I did. And if I completely put aside how I feel about the Saint and Patch relationship, it was flawless.
It's such a
yeah.
It's really good.
Who's next? Is it
Alicia?
Alicia?
Is it me?
Have you picked anything yet? I'm guessing no.
I didn't know it was me.
Alicia, I've got a list for you. I've got a list of books that I've seen that I want you to pick.
I'll pick, well, the ones I've already bought,
like, if
Sarah will
it's
hate, so I'm not going to pick any of those.
A
really short
fairy.
fairy. I don't think that short fairy books exist.
Well, tell me now, so I can get it now, and then I can read it for the next month and a half while you guys read
tomorrow.
it in like 2 days.
I will. I'll have a perusal and tell you tomorrow.
Well, that wraps up All the Colours of the Dark by Chris Whittaker. Why do I feel emotional about the fact that
I don't want it to be wrapped up?
We've wrapped it up. Like, I'd like to keep talking about this if we can, please. Like,
I don't want it wrapped up.
It's a roller coaster.
So sad.
Thanks, Chris Whittaker, for hands down what would have been the height. Like, it would have been a 5 all round if Sean wasn't a meanie pie and thought that The Runaway Bride was better than this.
Unbelievable.
Pride is not
Unbelievable.
Listen,
better
if
than
I was allowed to go back in time, I'd change that one, but I'm not allowed to do that.
fine.
We will forgive Sean her sins. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Don't forget to follow us on the socials. We're part2_book club on Instagram. Come follow along. Don't forget, we do have a back catalogue of podcasts. If this is your first listen, we've got a bunch of reviews, and we've also got a bunch of life and stuff we've learned along the way, stuff we're still learning. And basically, we are a perimenopause support group disguised as a book club. So there's a fair chunk of content in there about that. I do want to come back, though, and talk specifically about perimenopause next, because I am riled up on how little research, medication, training there even is in this space as we all start to enter and as I start to navigate my way through some of the early symptoms. But more on that in the next podcast, I think. We will post on our Insta page what our next book club read is. It'll be Alicia's choice. She's currently researching, I think, as we speak.
Yep.
Literally looking at
Got
her
a few down here.
There's a lot to live up to, Alicia.
I know. It's not going to be as good. I can't guarantee that.
You never
In fact, I can guarantee it won't be as good.
difficult, I think.
But thanks so much for joining me, guys. I'll let you crack on with your evenings. I'm going to crack on with my day here in sunny Bris Vegas. Yeah, love you all.
Love you too. Night. Good morning. See you
Bye,
later.
guys.
Right,
Bye, everybody.